Hello, I'm Kabira. So I want to talk, and I'm giggling because I think if you've watched my other videos, like you see this earnestness and me being like, yeah, I'm gonna be that 2-minute person. And fucking hell, I can only go like 6 to 9 minutes, and I'm like, stop. So here's my attempt: boundaries. All right, now we could spend a year together talking about boundaries, but I want to talk about boundaries if you're an energy healer, massage therapist, yoga teacher, even working virtually or in person, and why this is so important. So no matter what you're studying with me, you're going to kind of know that like I'm going to deep dive with you on both grounding and boundaries. And my interest always is not just like how we can articulate it, but how do we actually sense this on an energetic level? And part of the work that you'll do with me is how do you actually know what you know, beyond your 6 senses. The Native Americans say that we've got 13 senses. And so how do you start to access and trust the information that you receive? Because it's going to be a very unique way that you receive it. And the biggest challenge we can make is trying to be like someone else, because you're going to miss how the universe speaks to you through your own system. So with boundaries, super, super simple. The reason why in my teaching of energy work and yoga work and just human relating work, boundaries is so important is that, one, sometimes without meaning to, we don't realize that we're trespassing other people's boundaries. And 2, we might have our own insecurity of knowing that we're allowed to set our own boundaries. We might have a history of invasion in our own field. And it will take some practice to rewire that, which you can do a myriad of ways. And I always think that no matter what you're doing on a physical, mental, emotional level, you better get some energetic support, because that's going to really go into like the subtler back end to strengthen and rewire what you're actually trying to do, to create that clarity. So simple terms, if I'm going to sense someone's boundaries, it's almost like, if you're doing it as a practice, it's like stepping back so that someone has enough space, because we all have an energy field. Our boundary begins before our body. It actually is like in our field, and our fields expand and contract. So for some of us, we actually, without knowing, might expand our field super wide, which can be helpful. Like if you're a yoga teacher, you're going to expand your field wide, and that's your way to like be with your students when you're teaching. But also it can be like a defense mechanism. Like you're so terrified that you're kind of like, I need to track everyone all the time. So what that means is it's almost like your field is jammed open and can't come back in. And you're going to the supermarket, you're going to the mall, you're going to the beach. And instead of like being contained and only feeling and sensing yourself, you're like, I know what the other 100 people plus what's happening to them as well. So, there is some important work to do in order to be able to rest yourself, to not be on high alert on a energy tracking level of how do you start to like feel that healthy expansion, contraction in your own field. So that's something that you get to look at with you. Like, how are you functioning in your field? And I would love, get in touch with me, because that's one of my specialties in work is really being able to help you define it and rewire it. So when you're sensing someone else's energy field, it's taking out the idea of like it should be a certain space from their body, and actually knowing from your way of sensing, feeling, seeing, hearing, smelling, a sensing that you don't have a language yet for, of where's their boundary. And what's really cool is that the more you practice this, it's actually quite palpable of, oh, I can sense this, I can feel it. And then instead of being like, well, here's their boundary and I'm going to go in, it's actually like, and am I going to wait like at the door of their boundary and wait to get invited? And can I take out any agenda where I might feel like I actually need to make closer contact, because we actually are contacting one another without physical contact. Like, we are telepathic, we are psychic, we are astrally communicating all the time. We just don't talk about it. This is the indigenous part of ourselves. We're all indigenous. This is the indigenous part of ourselves. It's been lost, right? And so it's like, how do you actually start to realize, like, there's a connection being made on this astral level, on this non-touching level. That's how we know what we know without knowing how we know it. So can I just wait at the door? And maybe that's enough. And maybe that's where the communication and interaction needs to happen. Or maybe their system's like, yeah, I'm gonna bring you in a little bit closer. And you'll almost feel like you're getting pulled in. And it's an invitation. And it's kind of like you're not allowed to go into someone's house or home without being invited. And the reason why this is so important is that it's going to create true safety and trust, where that person's system, consciously, they may not be aware of any of this, but that person's system is going to say, you trust me. You're actually paying attention to me. You actually respect me. You're actually going to take time. You're actually waiting for me to say yes and no. You're not projecting or pushing on me. And that's going to create a level of trust where it's like, I might feel safe enough to be a little bit more vulnerable with you. And this is important whether, you know, you're working as a massage therapist, energy healer, yoga teacher, but also like making love. I mean, that's our most vulnerable area. And you know, I think there's a big rewiring now of how to actually realize, like, when someone wants to be penetrated or even touched, like, even before the sex happens, when they want to be touched, you know, what is needed to create that connection. And also, like, I would love to apply this to, you know, when we're going to the doctor. You know, pre-COVID, I traveled around the world so much, and you know, had to go to different doctors around the world, and, you know, especially going to a gynecologist, because that's our most vulnerable area. You know, it was interesting to see, you know, there are 3 gynecologists in particular that, I don't know if they did special training, but I was like, wow, you know, like, one lady actually has tea with you for 30 minutes and talks to you so that you feel relaxed and comfortable enough. And then the exam itself is so fast and painless, including the pap smear, right? For those of us who are women and no pap smears, like, it can be traumatic. You know, and, you know, just even another one where it's like, the amount of slowness that this one practitioner did of inserting the speculum. And there's just such a power in creating true care and listening to where someone really is. And, you know, I know, even whether we're talking doctors or dentists, like, I've had a lot of, or even therapists, I've had a lot of negative experiences that now when I walk into a room, my body will go into alert, like high alert of, you know, we've had bad things happen before. So it really is our responsibility as humans of how do we realize we're invading, and how do we actually start to pay attention and see where someone else's boundaries are. And then the flip side, because we also, you know, if we're the person experiencing it, we can't control someone's awareness of boundaries, but we can control our ability to hold our own boundaries. And especially for my friends who are a little bit more empathic, open field, sensitive, you know, that's your work. That is your work of, like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to hold my space, even if I feel really uncomfortable doing this. So I would love to work with you, you know, and pay attention. I'll be sending out more material, a little ebook on boundaries, because, you know, boundaries are badass. So sending love, and talk to you soon.